Well, let me be the first to offer my heartfelt congratulations to everyone involved with the 2024 Tennessee Titans. You officially did it. You forced our hand. It's Mock Draft Monday, kids. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone, 615.
Jumping the gun a little bit.
737-1045. Yeah, they're not officially on the clock yet.
They don't play 16 games anymore.
Oh, but if they did, this would be a historically bad team, not just in terms of football, but in terms of betting. We've got some numbers to get to. This is the first time. I mean, season's been done for a while. Like, we all understand this. Good morning, by the way. Lucas is back. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hope your holiday was good.
Hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas.
You were greeted with a 20-13 Jags game where even the announcers sounded terribly bored. I don't mean Mike, Keith, and Mac. I meant Spiro Dides and Adam Archuleta, who were doing it for CBS yesterday.
The unofficial television voices of the Tennessee Titans.
They've seen some bad Titans-Jags games, man, and they were so over it. You could tell on the broadcast, try as they might, professionals though they may be, to hide it. They were not having it. And I'll be honest, I think this is the best the vibes have been around this fan base since, like, week one, since Will Levis had the gut punch pick that sent you spiraling after you got up against the Chicago Bears on the road. You had a lot of hope and optimism coming out of the offseason. It all comes crashing down, and every week since then has been an unrelenting suffering. But now, given that you're playing for top draft position or losing for top draft position, I don't know that the fan base has been in a better mood at any point this season, at least based on the mentions.
Yeah, yesterday on Titans Talkback, there did seem to be a bit of a jolt. It was almost like that Giants performance. By the way, how mad is the Giants fan base today after Drew Lock decided to go full Tom Brady mode yesterday, 5 total touchdowns.
They've been waiting for Malik Neighbors to just be that kind of world beater all year long, and he's had moments throughout the course.
He's been the guy's a 1,000-yard receiver with that revolving door of quarterbacks.
I know.
Incredible. In fact, a lot of those rookies, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison and Brock Bowers, what they're doing with their quarterback situations. Anyway, there did seem to be a jolt, a defibrillator of sorts from yesterday in Titans Talkback, at least, because with a top 2 pick comes optimism. Titans don't have a top 2 pick yet, but here comes this dichotomy of a fan base that can be excited about hope and potential if you do move into the offseason with a top 2 draft pick with quarterback as a need. And then the other side of that, which is a locker room of a team that has now lost 5 in a row and is knocking on the door of a 3-14 campaign. They feel the opposite of the way the fan base that could be excited about a top 2 pick feels. It's a weird place to be.
Well, should we go through it? Because never has the game mattered less. I mean, they did lose 20-13. Jags swept you, so I don't know if you feel good about that. I don't know if you feel bad about that. You probably don't care at this point in the season. Let me just quickly run through the lowlights before we move on to the things that actually matter here, because, Lucas, it is inevitable. Like Thanos and Nick Westbrook-Akina, it has come for us. Mock Draft Monday is officially on our doorstep. But yes, you get swept by the Jags, who now have 4 wins on the season. You account for half of them. Congratulations to all involved. It's only the 4th time in 30 years of Titans-Jags that the Jags have swept Tennessee.
2 of the last 3 years, by the way.
Oh, God.
Happened as part of that 7-game losing streak in 2022.
Don't love that. Rookie wide receiver Brian Thomas was excellent. 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. It's his 8th game with at least 60 yards and a score, which tied him with Randy Moss.
It's another impressive rookie wide receiver.
There's fun rookies everywhere. The best thing that the Titans did yesterday was Tajay Spears. He got knocked out of, literally, both in 2 different literal ways, got knocked out of his first 100-yard game because he got concussed again, unfortunately. That's probably that's the most disappointing part of all of this, is that Tajay Spears and Jalen Duncan, who they just got back in the lineup, he goes out with a shoulder injury.
Immediately goes down.
I mean, I don't know. They can't win for losing. And, well, I guess they literally can win for losing at this point with the draft position, but that's neither here nor there. Tajay gets knocked out of his first 100-yard game because the hit that concusses him loses 5 yards, so he exits with 95. It's still a career high, but you understand why that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, and he will not play next week.
Worst vibes of an NFL game I've ever been around. I mean, between the tornado watch that was hovering around northern Florida yesterday.
We escaped with no delay yesterday.
I swear to God there weren't more than 10,000 people in that stadium, and I was shocked that there was even that many. Two teams combined for 6 wins. Obviously, the Jags come out victorious there. You had a Titans player, I couldn't quite tell who, a Titans player joking in the tunnel. Hey, look, boys, we finally got a night game, because he's pointing up at how bleak and dark the sky is, which is just all kinds of cruel, ironic comedy about what their season has been. Arguably, the funniest part or the best part of the day was the cartoon Jags mascot losing a boxing match to cartoon Will Levis.
Yeah, that was incredible.
On the Jags Jumbotron.
Pre-game.
The thing that makes that even funnier is we're there at 4 or 5 hours before kick, so we're down on the field. It's me, Teron, and Jimmy. And we're watching them run through all the normal pregame stuff. Like the Jags mascot is rappelling down from the sky as if they're going to do that in the middle of a tornado watch in Jacksonville.
They do that every game, don't they?
They tried. They sure as hell tried. They at least made sure to go through his warm-up on that before the weather got real nasty. And it only lasted for about, 35 minutes, but whatever. But we're watching that. They run through that cartoon boxing match on the Jumbotron before, and the Jags mascot wins. Like 5 hours before the game, and then right before kickoff when fans are in the stadium, he loses to Will Levis.
Was it being controlled by someone? Was it like a video game sort of thing?
Man. I don't know. But again, another piece of symbolism for what that football game was yesterday. And the best part of it all is you didn't even have the worst coaching job of the day, because Raheem Morris exists. Shout out the Atlanta Falcons. Woo! All right. You're second in the draft order. Congratulations. That's where things are at. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about what they might do, who they might pick. Are they interested in quarterbacks? Are they interested in both quarterbacks at the top of the draft? Or are they only interested in one quarterback at the top of the draft? And, of course, these things remain fluid because it's December the 30th. So many, many things can change between now and April, the end of April, when the selections are actually made between combine and testing and medicals and all the other things that we talk about, pro days and so on and so forth. But you now play to lose. They have made their football team so irrelevant that the biggest celebration of the year outside of the Texans game has been the Giants beating the Colts yesterday. The Colts, man.
Yeah, absolute dumpster fire right now.
I mean, get out of town. You see what McAfee did on Twitter yesterday?
Yeah, he did. He went scorched earth on Indianapolis. And former Colts players are popping up everywhere. There is a very real discussion about where the worst vibes are in the AFC South right now.
Oh, it's all bad.
It is.
Even Houston does not feel terribly good.
Think about this. The Houston Texans have now lost 2 games in a row where they were run off the field against the Ravens. They were shut out on offense. Their only points came out of a safety because Derrick Henry tried to bounce it outside in the shadow of his own goalpost. The vibes are terrible in Houston. They're playing their worst football. Injuries are piling up. Their fan base is angry. And they've had the division clinched for weeks now. Weeks, plural. And they have the luxury to rest starters next week in the regular season finale at Nissan Stadium because they will be hosting a playoff game. That is the state of the AFC South. It's not the biggest gap between champion and the rest of the teams. That's easily the AFC East. I don't know if you've seen the point differential. The Bills are plus 164 in point differential. The next best in the AFC East, Dolphins are -7. I mean, it is drastic. But the Buffalo Bills are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. The Houston Texans are struggling right now, and they've had this division in hand for weeks.
So, it all doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think that they should wear the Houston Oilers uniforms next weekend. Just out of, that's the one good thing that this damn franchise has going for it right now. Don't sully those by losing to Texans backups next week. But that's the best possible outcome. Like, truly for the franchise, this is now the best possible outcome. And you got, we'll cover this later. Gentry Estes, the columnist for the Tennessean, has decided that it's time for Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker to get fired. We'll cover that ground here in just a little bit. Brian Callahan will speak at 11:45, which probably means 11:50. So we'll keep you updated on that. We'll carry that press conference live because there was a report about his job security over the weekend, and I'm certain he's going to be asked about it today. Wasn't going to be a last night thing. But coming up next, we will get into the fan base vibe check. How you feeling? How genuinely? There's a lot of stinky things that have happened this season, and I feel like for the most part, fans want to see their teams win. But when you have wasted so much time, as this Tennessee Titans team has done, they've given you no choice but to root for them to lose because it's in the best interest of the franchise long term. So we'll get a vibe check from you, 615-737-1045. Coming up next, I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. Titans lose to the Jags, but you already knew that. 20-13, the final in Jacksonville yesterday. One more game to go, and then you can get to the fun part, which is the offseason. How do they try and put it back together? Who's going to be responsible for putting it back together is a question that seems to be kind of hanging in the air a little bit as we move forward through the rest of this thing, understandably so. But a vibe check from the fans. Lucas did talk back last night. It's a tough way to come back from vacation for you. But I'm sure you and Zach and Dyson did well.
Always enjoy Titans talk back.
Mm-hmm. And so you told me, I was curious to know generally what the vibes were, because that's the most probably unfiltered, raw moment for Titans fans without time to really process things. You get a little time between, what's the format? What happens after the game broadcast? What is the next thing that occurs? It doesn't go straight to talk.
No. Titans radio locker room report, network post game goes on for about an hour where we do plays of the game, stats and scores around the league, recap things. Mike Keith talks to Brian Callahan. Yeah, and then we pick up at approximately yesterday was 3:40 and go until 6:30, just breaking it all down.
So, by the way, another highlight of yesterday's game went very fast.
It did. It
flew by.
Very
fast. That's been, mercifully a couple of these stinkers that they've put out. At least the clock keeps running because of the way that it was a low possession game, certainly yesterday between the Titans and the Jags. But again, game not terribly relevant, because now what is the most relevant is how you going to fix it? What are you going to do? And the vibes around the fan base seem as good as they've ever been, because now you can talk about a team potentially. Right now it's the number 2 draft pick. It's the first time I've logged into Tankathon all year long, was yesterday. Patriots still with the tiebreaker against Tennessee for the number 1 overall pick, or I guess Tennessee technically with the tiebreaker in the head-to-head. Both teams 3-13. Patriots losers of 6 straight. Titans losers of 5 straight, which ties the Browns. The Bears have lost 10 in a row.
Yeah.
10 in a row, but still have only the 9th pick, because that's all that 4-12 will get you in this cluster of terrible, terrible football teams in 2024. So the vibes are high around the 2nd overall pick, because now you can really start to engage in the quarterback conversation in ways that it didn't really make sense to when it was hovering around 6 or 8 or 9. And by the way, beating the Texans could be truly detrimental to that draft position, which, we'll have plenty of time to work through pending next week's results. But you said that the lines were loaded yesterday for Titans Talkback, and I was rather surprised. I guess I was surprised that people are just happy to see their team lose as much as they are, but I completely understand it at this point, because certainly these games haven't mattered.
Yeah, again, hope, breeds joy and confidence and sort of a renewed energy, and that was definitely the feeling yesterday. It's such a strange place to be, because the Titans want to win on Sunday. The players want to win. Brian Callahan wants to win. They're going to do everything in their power to win, wearing Oilers uniforms at home against Houston. We understand the importance of that game to the franchise, to the organization from top to bottom. But this is, I think, the first week that Titans fans are pretty much in that mode. We put it to a poll. Where were you at after yesterday? Happy about the loss or upset that you got swept by the Jags? And right now, 82% are saying happy about the draft pick. And that's, about 400 votes. So not a complete answer, but I think most people are there. And all year long, we tell fans, listen, we're not here for the tanking thing. That but we do. I know you're making a face. We do. We do that all year. We say we have no interest in the tanking conversation.
No, I'm not interested in the tanking conversation. But the thing about it is I'm not gonna wag my finger at fans. We've talked about that. Yes. The differentiation. That's the only reason I'm making. There's
a big differentiation. At this point, you can't blame the fan base for wanting the top 2 pick.
Brother, I couldn't blame them after 0-3.
Yeah, but there's also the understanding that that's not how they're going to approach it this week. So there's the disconnect that we talk about all year long, and it's going to be on full display this weekend with the Titans team desperate to finish the year on a win, to sweep the Houston Texans, if it provides any sort of positivity for them going into the offseason, and a fan base that wants hope, wants an offseason of hope at the quarterback position, and that's what a top 2 pick brings.
Well, if you need affirmation of that from somebody who speaks on behalf of your football team on a regular basis, by the way, I feel bad for a great many people who have gotten a raw deal with just how down tremendous this franchise was I think Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan have been in bad positions all year long. I don't know that they've necessarily helped themselves dig out of said bad positions, but for Brian Callahan to have to be up there all year long answering all these questions with Rand nowhere in sight, with Amy Adams-Strunk completely out of the picture, with Chad Brinker in this nebulous role that is it above Rand Carthon, is it not above Rand Carthon, collaboration, all this crap. Brian Callahan just had to go out there and take the slings and arrows, man. And I know that he is tired of it, but he was asked yesterday about something that the fans are infinitely more interested, which is the draft. At this point in the postgame press conference, after his team lost 20-13 and gets swept by the Jags for only the fourth time in the 30-year history of the series, and this was the Titans head coach.
That's for you guys to talk about. We don't talk about that. It's not something I ever talk to the team about. It's not something I think about. That's all for news and clicks and conversation, and we're focused on trying to go play one more football game this year and try to win it. And that's all I really focus on and all I really put my energy towards. The rest of it is what it is, and we'll talk about the draft at another time.
And, that is the 100% correct answer. If he said anything but that as your head coach, no matter what you want to happen as a fan, you would immediately sour on that person if he acknowledged anything around the draft whilst still coaching an NFL season. He was asked last week, Lucas, on Friday, whether, how much he, if at all, he had been involved in the scouting process. And he said not at all because he's trying to beat the Jags on Sunday. And ultimately they didn't.
Yeah, which is the correct answer.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Even though, it's for the sake of this franchise getting up out of this miserable, godforsaken place, the draft is the most important part of how they're going to do it. And they've had, at least for the front office, they've had 2 cracks at this so far, and they've got a huge hole to continue to dig themselves out of. Like, nobody is kidding themselves about this roster, even though the roster has technically more talent on it than it did a year ago. There are still so many places that you have to get right. And we're still waiting on that, home run draft, right? He's at the front office, and I keep saying the front office, not the specific, because I'm trying not to specifically pin all of it on just one person, because there's so many more people involved, even though it's easier to just pin blame on one person, one face. If you're a fan base that's currently unhappy with the situation, coach, player, GM, or otherwise, but we're still kind of waiting on that home run draft, right? They've had a couple of solid ones, but the product, in terms of wins and losses, has gotten worse in 2 years, from 6 wins to now 3 wins. Where they're headed in 2025, no one can say, but they really need to nail the organic regeneration of this roster. I mean, is that upcoming draft for them to have a chance?
Is that the biggest criticism of Rand Carthon and how he has drafted, let's say, since he has had full ownership of the Titans draft? Because we cannot say with any degree of confidence that Rand Carthon had full ownership of that 2023 draft.
No, in fact, you could say very much the opposite.
The opposite. He walked in with Ryan Cowden and Mike Vrabel, and he was the new guy.
And Mike wanted Cowden to be the GM.
Right. So there you go. So since then, is that the biggest criticism? Because he has not done the J-Rob thing of the last few J-Rob drafts of unbelievable whiffs. Like, I mean, mind-blowing swing and misses, especially in the first round. The last draft class has had some solid players. J.C. Latham, Jarvis Brownlee, Tavondre Sweat, but they have not.
No, Jarvis did not have a good day yesterday.
That you kind of saw the difference there between first round
and fifth round.
Right. I mean, tough. Length, athleticism. Because on the 2 that I'm thinking of, by the way, drops in the bucket from Mac Jones on both.
He played a really, and he was running for first downs and stuff like that yesterday.
But on the 2 big plays, the touchdown and the 1 long ball, I mean, Jarvis Brownlee physically couldn't have been any closer.
He's in good position.
He's got great coverage.
But physically, you are correct. He could not have been in better position, but physically he is also outmatched.
Exactly.
By a much more talented and traits-filled athlete, for lack of a better phrase. But here's the thing, because you were out, obviously. Nobody expected you to catch up on the radio show while you were on Christmas break. But Bill Barnwell had an article on ESPN, and it was the most attractive 2025 job openings. And the Titans were listed as a job opening as far as the head coaches go, obviously, with a head coach still in place, and according to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, the NFL Network, expected to be back, which we will cover at some length in the noon hour today. But the criticism was not necessarily of the coaching. The criticism was way more of Rand Carthon, saying that JC did not have a great game yesterday. It's rookie left tackle, up and down. You grade on a curve in that sense. But basically saying that Rand Carthon's drafts have not been much better than John Robinson's, which I wholly disagree with because John's were disastrous. And John lit, between the 3 drafts and the AJ trade, he lit this franchise's future on fire. And that's not a personal attack, that's a professional attack, but that is indisputably fact at this point. But when I read through the article and saw the criticisms that were being lobbed at the front office that's now been in place for 2 off seasons, my primary takeaway was, okay, they have been solid, and there have been free agent contributions. And even though DeAndre Hopkins isn't here anymore, you get credit for D-Hop because he made a difference in 2023. And there have been some things that were done correctly, even if it hasn't gotten you to the place that you expected to be. But the perspective was, are they good drafts, including Will Levis, or are they just not as catastrophically bad as what came before it? And solid really isn't getting the job done.
Yeah. How did John Robinson, before lighting the future of the franchise on fire, like you said,
before professional arson,
how did John Robinson earn the trust of this fan base?
Oh, he killed 2019.
Well, he drafts Jack Conklin, All-Pro his rookie year, right? He drafts A.J. Brown, who becomes the 7th receiver of the Titans era to have a 1,000-yard season his rookie year. He drafts Jeffrey Simmons, who is hurt for the majority of his rookie year, and then comes in late October and is an instant impact, like immediate cornerstone players with an immediate impact. And then it was in J-Rob we trust.
19 really sealed it, right? Because that Derek wasn't Derek really until 19. No. I mean, he was, but
even
not
Byard
really.
wasn't Byard, his rookie year.
Byard
but
had
he did
a couple
turn
of good
into that.
seasons. Yeah. He had some goodwill because mayor of Murfreesboro locally, like the vibes were good. You knew what kind of a player he was. You knew what kind of a person he was coming in. So the first draft for John would have been 16, right? That's the number 1 overall pick. They trade out. They get Conklin because they trade back up after trading down with the whole Rams experience. And Jared Goff goes number 1 overall. They put together that draft class, and it's it's functional. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but Conklin is an all-pro. Derek's there, but he's not doing Derrick Henry things just yet. Then you go through 17, and it's Corey Davis and Adoree Jackson, and you don't love Corey Davis with the 5th overall pick, and Adoree's still playing, but he's still a pro player, and the big part of this, even predating John knocking 2019 out of the park, was how few of these first-round picks got signed to second deals here, including Conklin, Corey, Adoree. I mean, you can go down the list. Rashaan Evans, obviously, was a bit of a nightmare situation where he ended up as a healthy scratch in the AFC Championship game. A healthy scratch in the Bengals game, not the AFC Championship game, because, of course, he let Patrick Mahomes escape by fingertips in the first half, which started that snowball effect. So, basically, the case that was being made. The job hasn't been good enough with the amount of resources and draft capital. I guess resources and draft capital are kind of the same thing, but financial resources and draft capital that you've had at your disposal for now 2 off seasons to get this thing back to functional. Because it's not functional. No, it's a nightmare.
You needed this rookie class to have a similar level of impact that the likes of, and I know you didn't draft a receiver, but the A.J. Brown, Jeffrey Simmons type of impact that they had in their rookie year that directly helped the Titans reach an AFC championship game.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the biggest criticism, right, of Rand Carthon's draft, singular. It's been solid. It's been fine. It's not been franchise changing yet.
No, and that's what they need. They need franchise changing direction when you pitch this new vision, when you upsell the way that you do. I know Gentry included in his column today that quote from the SiriusXM interview that Rand gave this offseason where it was something to the effect of it's not even paraphrasing. The quote is, we literally checked all the boxes, and now you look at this roster and you say, huh? Are you sure? And again, it's not just about him. I know people are going to make it about him, and that ultimately, I have no idea whether that's going to cost him individually his job or not moving forward, as opposed to the front office structure that they've invested. They've invested so much money in that data analytics staff that Brinker oversees. That's a really big thing to overhaul if you're going to overhaul if you're going to fire a GM but not clear out everything else that you brought in with him, right? So that's kind of the curiosity here as we move forward into these next couple of weeks where there's not real clear evidence of what they're going to do because you have no idea what Amy Adams-Strunk is thinking at any given point in time. But the vibes around the fan base right now, I'd be curious to know, if you end up with the number 1 overall draft pick, do you want Rand Carthon to make that pick, or do you want a different GM? It's going to be a conversation that's had if they do. I mean, even with the 2nd overall pick, if you're talking quarterback, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, he was in the draft room when Will Levis was drafted, and that has set this franchise back monumentally. They then built around Will Levis. You can start first and foremost by saying that the mistake was in drafting Will Levis and that he was drafted for a previous coaching staff and he was drafted by a previous scouting staff, even though a lot of those people are still there. Not Cowden, but a lot of those people are still in the building. By the way, I would expect significant change top to bottom in the football structure of things because there's a lot of people in that building whose contracts are getting ready to expire who had contracts under Vrabel and Robinson. So we'll see on the lower levels how those things make themselves evident. But that's going to be a conversation that is had if Rand Carthon is still GM here. If they end up with the number 1 overall pick, are you confident enough in them being able to turn it around based on the evidence that you have in place? I don't really know how to answer that right now because I really don't know who's pulling the strings on all this stuff, really pulling the strings on all this stuff.
Well, the interesting layer to that, if the number 1 or number 2 pick, if that's what the Titans have, and they go in the direction of quarterback, would be the input Brian Callahan has at that position that he didn't necessarily have coming into this job. He inherited this starting quarterback in Will Levis. So that would change the tenor of the offseason a little bit because our discussion would be, okay, how much input does Brian Callahan have in getting his guy at quarterback?
Because right now he has none because he hasn't had time to look at any of these guys yet, right? This is all, I mean, they're still in season. The coaching staff, none of the coaches will look at players basically until Senior Bowl, right? I mean, obviously this team season is coming to an end very, very soon, so there will be time, and you would hope for their sake that you take a little time to get away from all this toxicity and nonsense because it has been just an unholy mess. So you need some time to decompress before you dive right back into the thing. But yeah, a lot of coaches really don't get around to this stuff until Senior Bowls, till the All-Star games, like Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, all these things that exist, those being the 2 primary ones. So he can't have any input yet because they're still trying to finish a football season. But for the fans, I don't know. This has been such a god-awful year that there cannot be better vibes really at any, I mean, I don't know. When have you felt more effusive emotion from a fan base? Because you've done talkback. I'm not involved in that. I do primetime, but that's usually 4 or 5 hours after the fact.
And that's the internet crazies.
Yeah, and they, God love you. You are all crazy, as is represented by the F&M Bank chat on a regular basis, but we appreciate you.
No, but it would be the Houston game. It would be the Houston game because that was still...
You really thought they might do something.
Yeah, and that was that stretch where Levis was improving, and then it turned into a win, and he overcame the pick 6, and they played well. They were explosive with the downfield passing game, and you thought, no, wait a second. They could turn around and win another game, and suddenly you're in the graphic. You're in the hunt. So, yeah, the Houston game is the highest point, vibes-wise, all season long. But as we know, it dropped off pretty quickly.
Jay Dewey says the Titans are like the Biden administration. No one knows who's calling the shots. That's not very nice, even if it's funny. Taylor is up next. Hey, Taylor.
Hey, good morning. I just want to weigh in on the vibe checks. So yesterday was not good. I haven't been able to watch the Titans as much as I wanted to this year. So I finally turned it on, had to turn it off second quarter so I didn't ruin my wife and my kids' day.
That's good parenting and good relationship.
Good husbanding.
Great and well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I needed that. And then I saw that we got the second pick, and I was like, okay, that's fine. But now I'm going to be pissed if we win this weekend. So now I just want to see Jeffrey Simmons starting quarterback, T'Vondre Sweat running back. Let's just do some RPO, and the worst thing that could happen is that Jeff Simmons, his quarterback rating goes to -90. Which doesn't matter for his career, but I thought that would be a lot of fun. But anyways, as far as the draft goes, I'm really curious to see what Rand does, because so far I think he showed his hand and drafting the O-line, trying to build a foundation. I'm curious if he feels like he can get a right tackle later on in the draft, or if he's going to get a skilled player in the first part of the draft, because we haven't seen him draft a skilled player early on. So I'm curious how the quality that he's going to pick early on. So that's my take.
Thank you for the call, and well done by you for saving your wife and children from the 2024 Tennessee Titans. We can get into stuff like that coming up next. Obviously, Mock Draft Monday, it's officially upon us. You wanted it, you got it. Here we are, 615-737-1045. The number, speaking of which, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward both had their last college football dances over the weekend. One went well, the other did not. We'll talk about it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. So the bowls are electric, except the toilet bowl. That was yesterday. We don't have to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about some fun bowl games. Pop-Tart Bowl is I don't care about the college football playoff. That is the premier event of the college football postseason, in my opinion. The mascots are electric. The football was pretty good until, they take Cam Ward out in the first half or after the first half of that game. It goes, it goes not Miami's way. And you see the talent differential between what Miami has had through the transfer portal and arguably, maybe inarguably, that's the best quarterback in University of Miami history.
Yeah, there's a discussion to be had there statistically.
And I know there are national champion winning quarterbacks that have played for the U and things like that. But, it is tough to argue that Cam Ward, given what he did this year and how often he was having to bail them out on a regular basis, that is certainly, and our lifetimes are not as long as some of your lifetimes, but that is one of the best quarterbacks I have ever seen in a University of Miami uniform.
No, it's the best single season statistically by any quarterback, and it's not even close. Not even remotely close. Cam Ward obliterated almost every single season record for a quarterback in Miami football history. And he was electric in this game.
Yeah, they lose by one, unfortunately, for Cam Ward and Miami. There was some talk. Who was doing the broadcast? Do you know? Did you watch this?
Yeah, it was Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers, Cole Kubelik.
Thought it sounded familiar because I think it would have been the analyst. Jordan Rogers said something to the effect of, is there any thought to putting Cam Ward back in here when they got the ball back after Iowa State went up 1 to see if they can't find a way to win that game? But, for his part, he got out. I know there's some criticism of Cam Ward. I think that's nonsense because the same people that are criticizing Cam Ward today for pulling himself out of that bowl game in the first half after he went 12 of 19 for 190 and 3 touchdowns and was great while doing it would have killed him if he didn't play in the bowl game at all. So, that whole conversation to me is a bit nonsensical.
I think it's better than opting out completely, personally. Some people disagree. Some people say if you're going to do that, just opt out. Just let the guy have the whole game. But I didn't mind it too much. They didn't win the game, and they lost by 1. So you could argue if he plays the whole second half, they do win, and it was a crazy shootout. But he got in, he stayed healthy, he helped his draft stock without a doubt. He was electric, and then he stepped out. And it's also a conversation about what does the coaching staff want. I don't know anything about Miami's quarterback situation next year, if they're going to go back to the portal. If Emory Williams, the backup who played the whole second half, is in contention for the starting job. But it benefits a lot of teams to have their backup quarterback play in the bowl game. Tennessee fans were very happy to see Joe Milton bow out because, yes, now Nico can start. Oklahoma fans, very happy to see Jackson Arnold start the bowl game. And I understand how the Jackson Arnold thing panned out this year. But I don't know if Emory Williams factors in next year. But if he does, then it's a win-win for both sides.
So that is how Cam Ward's collegiate career comes to an end. And obviously he will declare for the draft. And obviously he will be one of the top 2 quarterbacks taken in this upcoming draft, whether or not they are worthy of number 1 or number 2 overall selections as far as their talent relative to other years. It just depends on the teams and how interested they are, being, New England, who's currently sitting number 1 overall, who doesn't need the quarterback because Drake May has promise and is, kind of putting Gerard, I don't want to say directly, but because he has made progress, but the football team around them in New England has not, it's kind of put Gerard Mayo in a really precarious position, it seems, even though he's expressed him being on the same page as ownership at this point in time as a first-year Patriots head coach. But then to the Alamo Bowl, where the result was less competitive and really not even as competitive as the 36-14 final would indicate. Colorado got waxed by BYU, and it took a late push by Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter to really even get it that close, 36-14.
Yeah, it wasn't that close
against BYU. It really was not. And I hate when results go that way, just from a lack of competitiveness standpoint for 2 players who like we all know Shedeur Sanders to have been a great college quarterback. We know Travis Hunter to be, I'm not going to use the G word, generational, but he's a really, really special player. He's arguably going to be the most talented player in the draft class. I hate to have one result overshadow those 2 things, right? Because there is some sense. Now, I know Shedeur said something to the effect of, this is not going to overshadow what he's been able to accomplish, nor the larger journey that he is getting ready to embark on, because obviously both of those players will enter the NFL draft and be on NFL rosters as first-round picks this season. But it was a pretty big egg that they laid against a BYU team that just had answers for them at every turn. And a tough thing to see it end for the Sanders family that way. Even though I know some of you don't root for Deion. In fact, I know some of you actively root against Deion Sanders on a regular basis, and I think that's a bit foolish, but, whatever, your opinion. I hate it for the familial experience of the two sons and dad, the final walkout together and all that to have the unfortunate ending that it did. But credit to BYU for getting the job done against a Colorado team that did make strides year over year and proved itself to be worthy of more competitiveness than I think they were getting credit for early on.
Yeah, 9 wins for a program that was one of the worst in all of college football only 2 years ago. So the turnaround was dramatic. Very different story, though, for Shedeur than it was for Cam Ward. Shedeur played all 4 quarters, had that insurance policy, both he and Travis Hunter. Didn't get hurt, avoided injury, but, yeah, Shedeur struggled, man. It was 20-0 at half. 36-14 the final, but Colorado scored a garbage time touchdown late. Shedeur, 16 of 23, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions.
Also sacked 4 times.
Sacked 4 times. Yeah, the offensive line play was, it leveled off a little bit. It was terrible early in the year. It got a little bit better, and then it ended very poorly. He was running for his life on Saturday. Travis Hunter was fun. I mean, that 43-yard touchdown was electric. The acceleration just pops off the screen with him, and he did a lot to help his draft stock like he needed any help with it going into the offseason. But, Colorado was the story in this game, understandably so. I saw Dave Pasch and the ESPN crew, the ABC crew, got a lot of flack for just the constant Colorado talk. They hardly mentioned BYU, who was dominating that game.
Yeah.
So a little love for BYU, who finishes.
ESPN social media channels were really trying to take advantage of some Colorado garbage time touchdowns.
I know.
An unreal touchdown from Shedeur to Travis Hunter, which, okay, Travis Hunter is an excellent athlete. He did make a couple of guys
miss. It was a fun play.
But, okay.
To cut it to a 20-7.
27-7 at that point.
27-7, that's right.
27-7 at that point.
So BYU finishes with 11 wins. They've had a great year, but Colorado 9-4. It's a hat tip to Deion, and I am so fascinated at the Deion experience moving forward. The question has been all along, is he going to stick around after his sons leave? The answer feels like yes at this point. I mean, they acquired Caden Salter.
Yeah, in the portal.
Tennessee, kicked out of Tennessee, revives his career at Liberty.
VFL or VFL no?
VFL no, but it's fun to call him a Tennessee legend. Very highly recruited player, great high school football player out of Texas.
Can't be smoking in the dorms.
He steps in, and so you get that maybe stopgap veteran that can start for you that has experience. And you bring in Julian Lewis, a fun 5-star prospect. So, yeah, and suddenly there's kind of a path forward offensively at the quarterback position for Colorado under Deion. And I don't know, Shedeur probably didn't really impact his draft stock, I wouldn't think. He had his struggles on Saturday. But does it feel like that we are at the point where Cam Ward is clear-cut QB1 at the end of the college football season?
QB1 as far as the college quarterback season went, or QB1 heading into the draft process?
Because where we currently stand on December 30th, understanding there are months of interviews, combine, who knows what draft storyline or news story is going to help or hurt these guys. I think I feel like teams are going to be kind of split on the Shedeur thing because the Deion factor is there.
It's always going to be a conversation point, whether or not it's relevant.
And I think teams are going to fall in love with Cam Ward in the interview process because at every turn, all anybody can talk about is Cam Ward as a leader in the film room, holding guys accountable, all the things you love, and the kind of rags to riches story, 0-star recruit, incarnate word, Washington State to Miami. But I would just
tell you, there's never real consensus when it comes to NFL draft stock, especially this early on, because there are so many differing opinions. There are so many levels of people who are evaluating. Because, you can talk to a GM who may have a different opinion of a scout that's on their staff, right? And then it's the scout's job to go in there on, in the week leading up to the draft and bang the table for a prospect that they might believe in, but maybe the GM has a different opinion on. So it really depends on who you're talking to, what organization you're talking to, at what level you're having those conversations. So I struggle with consensus around any of them.
It depends who has the number one pick, because two different play styles. Like for Brian Callahan, for example, feels like Shedeur Sanders would be a better fit than a Cam Ward, where there's a lot of variance, a lot of improvisational things that have led to turnovers.
Cam is a significantly better college quarterback than Will Levis was, but he does have some of the Will Levis.
Some of those tendencies, but the good was far better.
No.
For Cam Ward.
I would not compare them at all, except to say that there are some attempts there that should not be attempted. Is all I will say, even if they don't result in turnovers the way that Levis's do. But I would agree with that assessment. If you're talking about from the Titans' perspective, Shedeur does make more sense than what you see from Cam Ward, but they may get in there. They may have a different opinion. Hell, Will Levis didn't make sense with Brian Callahan, and they hired Brian Callahan to coach Will Levis anyway. So some of these decisions can be made correctly. Some of these decisions can be made incorrectly. We know this by this point. We're going to have a conversation now, given that the Titans will probably be sniffing around the number 1 or number 2 overall pick at this point, and likely sniffing around the quarterback conversation, whether it be in the draft or in the veteran free agency. Is this the worst Titans team in 2024 we've ever seen? I think there's going to be a difference of opinions on these things, and I'd welcome your phone calls on this because many of you have just as good a perspective, if not better perspective, than Lucas and I. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
11:02, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Titans fell behind 13-0 and never fully recovered in a 20-13 loss at the Jaguars on Sunday, losing a fifth straight game and falling to 3-13 on the season, getting swept by Jacksonville in the process. Tyjae Spears had a career-high 95 yards rushing, but was knocked out of the game with a concussion in the third quarter. Brian Callahan said post-game Spears will not play in the regular season finale this weekend. Callahan will meet with the media again today, coming up at 11:45. Plenty of transfer portal drama over the weekend for the Tennessee Vols, especially at the wide receiver position. Headlined by former five-star Mike Matthews. The freshman reportedly plans to enter the portal, but is negotiating an NIL deal that would see him return to Tennessee. According to On3 Sports, Matthews would be the sixth Vols receiver to hit the portal, joining the likes of Squirrel White, Caleb Webb, and Chaz Nimrod. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So the Titans get swept by the Jags for only the fourth time in 30 years of that series going on. 20-13 yesterday in Jacksonville. It's good for the franchise because it secures better draft position. And again, it's not just about the first round, kids. It's about how you build out the rest of the roster, even though the first round pick is going to be the most discussed, the most debated, the most fretted over, and all these different things, the most hyper analyzed. There's many, many more pieces and parts to be acquired that your draft position, of course, will affect. I saw Austin Stanley tweet today that the 66 overall pick that the Titans would have had is the pick that is the L'Jarius Sneed trade now. So that's one that you're going to have to work through because this team has also moved some picks around in the past 2 years that have tried to do some things. And at the time, certainly you wouldn't kill him for acquiring one of the best cornerbacks on the market, even though the results in hand have gone not to plan, and he's got a $24 million cap hit next year, Sneed, which is also something that's going to have to be navigated around. All these big contracts that they sign, the cap hits get bigger in 2024. So this team, the way that it was constructed, how miserably it's failed, and everything that's resulted in the fan base now actively rooting for its franchise to fail, continue to fail en route to trying to secure Shador, or what are we doing for Cam Ward? Have we come up with a slogan for Ward? Our brightest minds will continue to workshop.
I haven't heard a go-to one.
Yeah,
we'll think on it.
We'll work on it. God knows we've got time at this point. When the draft discussion starts, I mean, it probably should have started many, many weeks ago, but it's December the 30th, and you finally gotten me to cave. Mock Draft Monday. The situation for the Titans, though, is they made promises that they couldn't back up about what this team was going to be. And honestly, so let me ask you this question, because this question was being debated amongst the four of us that are still making road trips at this point in time. Nick Suss, PK, Tehran, and myself. If they had just not oversold what they expected this football team to be in 2024, do you think that a portion of the fan base would have been good with it? Like if you'd actually said the word rebuild out loud and kind of come to terms with, okay, because they never really said it, right? You've got quotes from Rayan about checking all the boxes, literally checking all the boxes. You've got coming in here to be meaningfully competitive. You've got Burke Nihill. We thought we nailed the hire. Now we know we crushed it. All these different things.
No,
right?
The expectation was set to push for a playoff spot.
Right.
Not win the division, not win a playoff game, to push for a playoff spot.
Do you think if they simply would have been more, I don't want to say more honest about it, because I don't doubt that they thought they were going to be better than whatever the hell this has been in 2024, but just kind of set expectations a little lower.
Maybe
even trying to upsell the stadium, because the stadium's a big part of this. It's a perfect storm.
Maybe it would help people a little bit because you wouldn't have all those preseason quotes to point to, which there are a lot of those. But are we saying that would have changed their offseason approach?
No. I'm just saying in terms of the fan base, how viscerally people reacted to the point where then we got apathetic, working our way through the timeline of what this Titan season has been, to the point where now people just actively want them to lose for the best possible draft pick. I think if you'd have been more realistic with your fan base, they probably would have been more accepting of, okay, process, less pitchforks and torches. I don't know necessarily if Gentry Estes is writing a column in the Tennessean this morning about firing Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker.
Maybe, but they still spent all that money, and they addressed they made a bunch of moves that in the moment everybody was on board with.
Yeah.
Snead, Ridley, everybody was excited about all of these moves that they made.
Most excited about the center, and that's the thing that, I mean, man, that November the 20th is when he tore his ACL. That's going to be something that bleeds into their 2025. Anyway.
So you wouldn't have as much to point to in terms of preseason quotes about expectations where they thought they would be.
For sure.
But I don't know that it would move the needle that much in terms of the vibe of the fan base
Maybe
at this
not.
point.
But, I mean, objectively, this is, so in 8 seasons of me doing this job, there has been no worse team than this one that I've watched on a regular basis. Now, obviously, they've been playing football for 26 years, so there have been worse seasons by record. In 2014, when you go back and look at the 2-win season, there was a season that was equally as bad, even though they played less games in 2015. So the conversation is really between the 2014, the 2015, and the 2024 Titans, which is the worst team that you as a fan have watched.
2014.
In your personal opinion.
2014.
2014
Yes.
was the worst. That's Wiz's first year. That's pre-Mariota and the excitement that comes with the second overall pick and potential help at quarterback. That's the Met show, yeah?
Oh, yeah. That was the Zach Mettenberger experience. That's what led to the Marcus Mariota pick. 2014.
That draft class, man. When you go back and look at what Rustin Webster did, I mean, Lawan obviously panned out, even if it didn't end the way that everybody wanted it to, but Bishop Sankey in the second. Daquan Jones ended up being a good player. He's still playing for the Bills. Marqueston Huff, Avery Williamson, and Metcho in the 6th round. That was a really, really tough thing to work through.
I mean, they won.
That was a new regime, so there was still some hope around it.
Yeah, and you knew that you were going to have a top 2 pick, and at that time, I mean, that the quarterback draft class was exciting. I mean, it was 2 Heisman Trophy winners in Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. But that season, the Titans won in week 1. They beat the Chiefs on the road to start 1-0. I mean, say what you want about Wisenhunt. The guy knew how to win in week 1. And then they won 1 of their last 15 games, losing 10 down the stretch. The talent on that roster, I mean, you're talking about Antonio Andrews at running back, the revolving door at quarterback, including the Zach Mettenberger experience. I think if you say that the 2024 Tennessee Titans are the worst team in the history of the franchise, that is screaming recency bias. Now, are the 2024 Tennessee Titans, relative to preseason expectations, the most disappointing team in the history of the franchise?
Two different discussions.
Totally different discussion. And an argument can be heard for that. Now, there are some teams early on in the years where the team was in Nashville where they were expected to do something, and in terms of playoff success, and there was big drop-off. So,
but they were
that
still
could be a different
competing
discussion
at a higher level. They had earned, the same thing that we talked about with Brian Callahan at the start of the year, right? Those teams had earned the right to have some level of expectation. This team was propped up. This particular team in 2024 was propped up with a level of expectation that it did not yet deserve, and upsold on a variety of different fronts. Even if like upselling, I would have been fine with 7 games. Like I would have been completely. Hell, I may have been okay with them winning the same amount as they did last year. And listen, records, just like quarterback win-loss statistics are a flawed way to evaluate a quarterback because you're evaluating a quarterback based on a team metric. It's really tough for me to look at. Records do matter, right? Records dictate whether you get into the postseason. They dictate whether you get into the division. They dictate financial things like bonuses and all these other things. But it can be a flawed way to look at football teams, right? Records aren't everything, even though they do carry value. If they had been a better football team and found their ways into 6 games after winning 6 games last year, I still think people would have felt better about this than the way that it is absolutely cratered. Now, the 2 things that you can point to directly, what are the 2 biggest reasons this team's failed? Turnovers.
quarterback play.
Well, yeah, as a result of turnovers, but turnovers by a mile, right? It's not because...
Yeah, they don't force turnovers, and they commit a lot of them.
Their turnover differential is the stuff of horror movies, and their penalties. They are a hugely penalized team. For a team that has zero margin for error, they kill themselves on a regular basis with the penalties. So you can point to those two things directly and say, this is the biggest reason, bar none, that this team has failed as spectacularly as it has. Now, if you make some minor adjustments and if things even just regress to the mean in 2025, one would expect that you would have maybe not a 500 record. Well, obviously there's no 500 records anymore, 8-9, 9-8, but you would be closer to that objective if you just take away the historically bad turnover differential and historically bad penalty rate for this team. 2024 is the most disappointing of those three because I wasn't here in 14. 15 was my first year. And there was no expectation of the Tennessee Titans. The expectation was, well, how long is she going to wait? Well, actually, the organization was fined by the NFL for having no clear controlling owner situation. Then Amy Adams Strunk took over. Then she starts making decisions like firing Wiz halfway through, promoting Malarkey as interim, then keeping Malarkey, then hiring John, and all the things that start the domino effect that now find us in the place that we're currently at. But 14 is the worst. 14 is the worst. 2024, relative to those expectations, by far and away the most disappointing. We'll take your phone calls on this, 615-737-1045. We'll take your reaction to the game, to the draft order that more people seem to be vastly more interested in. And you'll also hear from Brian Callahan and Mason Rudolph about lessons that they say they're learning from losses that it's tough to really see at this point in time. We'll talk about it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
I love living in Middle Tennessee. We've got great restaurants, entertainment, sports, and one of the nation's top Ford dealers right here in our backyard. Two Rivers Ford. Remember that name. Two Rivers has been a staple in our community since 1983. They're locally owned. They have a non-commissioned sales team, and they sell below MSRP. They've been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
All right, Brian Callahan's press conference is it's supposed to be in 25 minutes. It's more likely in 30 minutes. So we'll keep you updated on that. We'll make sure we make the necessary adjustments so you can hear from the Titans head coach. I assume he's going to be asked about his job security today. That was not something that got brought up in the post-game press conference yesterday based on that report from Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, which, honestly is a story in and of itself that they're having to put out expected back as the first-year NFL head coach, which I think kind of tells you where the season has been heading, and at least the thought has been mulled. But we'll get into that here in just a little bit, and we'll certainly talk about it if he's asked about it today, which I would thoroughly expect him to be asked about it today. But in the meantime, we've been talking about this Titans team, how much happier fans are to see them lose now because about future implications, securing the best possible draft position, not just the first-round pick, but draft position moving forward, how else they're going to make the adjustments. You get into the fun stuff again, because the fun stuff for you is not football season lately. It's the offseason, and that's fine, because you can't lose in the offseason. And they can't they can do things to hurt you in the offseason, but not nearly as bad as some of this stuff has been this year.
Oh, I heard Will and Ramon talking about this morning, and I totally agreed. Next summer, people will be excited about this team. Like, no matter what happens, we are going to talk ourselves into this thing next summer. If they draft a quarterback, if they bring in a Kirk Cousins, whoever as a stopgap, the moves that they make.
They could do
yes,
both.
because when those things happen, what people, especially what fans envision, is the best case scenario. That's what flashes through their heads, and that's what they get excited about. So it will be a fun offseason because it's an offseason of personnel change, of quarterback change,
Potentially staff change.
right? So that just by nature will make for an exciting offseason for fans because it farms hope, and the best case scenario will be what they envision for the most part with every move.
Yeah, and so from your perspective, because I genuinely think the reason that I've reacted so viscerally to how awful they've been this year is because I talked myself into them being better than they were in 2023. I thought they were going to be a better football team. I bought it. And I'm kind of I have spent a lot of this season, trying to have a better tone about it because it affects fans infinitely more than it affects anybody else. And that is the thing, the reason why we exist, the reason why that football team exists is to entertain you guys, and you guys have been let down on a variety of different fronts this year. But from my perspective, I've just been trying to figure out, okay, where did I miss it? Could anybody have foreseen how badly this was going to go, or did you just get too swept up in the amount of different? I mean, they were making moves like as Madden. You don't ever see the amount of former players that reached out talking about how shocked they were to see the Titans spending at the top of the market on across the board, not just at one position or another, not just a big extension or something like that, but seeing the Titans really invest. The only person that I heard have a reasonable position on this was that Robert Mays interview, or that Robert Mays podcast that you've brought up several times throughout the course of the year, which is, how often does this work? The mega team, mega spending type of stuff. How often does it actually translate into immediate success
when there's not a good foundation in place?
And so that's the thing. I'm certainly not going to tell fans to not enjoy every part of the offseason and try and soak up all the feel-good of humanly possible. I just think from my perspective, I'm going to have to make myself more aware of being more measured in the way that we talk about these things, because I got ahead of myself. And, I think a lot of people have egg on their face about how this team ended up playing out, but I didn't think 7 wins was going to be a stretch, and a pretty big stretch for this particular team. 615-737-1045 is the number. You're going to hear from Brian Callahan and Mason Rudolph here in just a second, but first let's get to your phone calls. How about Josh?
Good morning, Buck. How are we doing?
Good.
Good. I just wanted to weigh in on the is this team worse than the 2014 team, 2015? The one thing that those 2014, 2015 teams were worse than where we're at now, but as a fan, I think this is the worst time to be a Titans fan because we're 2-14, and then every time you turn around on Red Zone, on any Twitter or whatnot, you'll see Derrick Henry doing great, Jonnu Smith catching the touchdown, A.J. Brown being amazing. Like, there's so many former Titans out there killing it, and then here we are licking our wounds and hoping we get the top 1 or 2 picks in the draft. So as a fan, I think this is the worst time to be a fan because all of our former players are on other teams doing great. The 2014, 2015 era, nobody was, Bishop Sankey didn't go to another team and light it up. Antonio Andrews and Dorial Green Beckham and Justin Hunter and all those guys, none of those guys did anything else after the Titans. So yeah, I think worst team 2014, worst time to be a fan is now. And,
thanks for the call, Josh. I appreciate it. It's a good perspective. The Derek thing really, and you guys have, unfortunately, from a fan's perspective, you've lived this before, right? Great Titans players going to the Ravens and having relative levels of success. I mean, Derek is obviously doing it at a much higher level. Derek Mason was excellent for Baltimore. I think he still is their franchise single-season leader in receiving, if I'm not mistaken.
Both Titans and Ravens have not had, a litany of Hall of Fame receivers by any stretch. But, yeah, Derek was phenomenal for both.
Yeah. So, that has been an experience that you have had before. This is obviously the most recent and most visceral because Derrick Henry he's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. More likely than not that Derrick Henry ends up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, if they win the Super Bowl, he should be a shoo-in, right?
Oh, no, that's the only thing. That's the only real conversation that you can have is he hasn't had enough postseason success to make it a shoo-in type of conversation. But statistically, there's been almost nobody like him in the history of the sport, and he's on the precipice of potentially hitting 2K again. By the way, shout out to Saquon Barkley, who've made the New York Giants look like fools, even though the Giants won yesterday. They have to see him in Week 18.
Henry's too far from 2K, by the way. I mean, I guess I shouldn't doubt his ability.
Yeah.
He's at 1,783. So I suppose that far be it for me to say Derrick Henry isn't going to rush for.
Doubt him.
Yeah, 220 yards.
I've done it before. It didn't end well.
Yeah, he would need about 220 yards when the Ravens finish the season against the Browns at home. Okay, he's going to hit it. Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, half the Chargers defense is made up of Titans. They're going to the playoffs. It's, the A.J. Brown thing, I think, still a little salt in the wound, even though we're damn near 3 years removed from that. You got to move on from that eventually.
To the caller's point, to say this season is the worst in Titans history, bit of recency bias there. 2014 was a particularly miserable experience.
It probably depends on who you're talking to, because I do think, there's so much love attached to some of those players. And I think, in today's...
Some of which players?
Derek, AJ, I wouldn't necessarily say that people are fretting over Bud Dupree, and it's unfortunate for Elijah Molden. His season's done.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 2014. Those guys weren't even close to being around in 2014.
No. What I'm saying is that people's level of attachment, not only are you experiencing a similar season to 2014 or 2015, but it's insult to injury because Derek is succeeding and AJ is succeeding and all these other things, pieces that you had in place that you let go.
Yeah, that it's fresh off of a 6-season stretch of winning football. Yeah. That does change things because in 2014 you were coming out of a long stretch of mediocrity, really since the 2008 year. There were a lot of 8-8s mixed in there. So yeah, I do understand how that makes it tougher.
Let's go to Bobby next.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
So I've been listening to the show. I've been listening to a lot of it back and forth, and I'll hit on a couple points and then let you guys say what you say. First, leadership, ownership. I think it's been long enough, and it's the time for the Amy and her family to bring, maybe bring somebody in, I don't know, like a Peyton Manning or somebody like that, let them dip their beak into the ownership and provide some guidance. That's point one. Point two, as far as a quarterback is concerned, I think you absolutely avoid a quarterback in this class. You go for another A-type player that could be there for, the entirety of their career. And I do like the Kirk Cousins idea. If they do release him before the roster bonus in March, I think he would be the perfect stopgap for this franchise for the next couple of years. Appreciate your thoughts, and I'll hang up now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you can do both things with the stopgap veteran and you can draft a rookie quarterback, given the position that you've now, unfortunately, that you're now in as far as draft order, but ultimately there are multiple ways to address this thing that the draft order will now present to you on top of what will be available to you in free agency. Because you do have some like the cap hits all go up next year. I mean, there's big cap hits in 2025 for some of these contracts that you've signed, but you do still have financial flexibility for a Derek Carr, for example, and also you could Atlanta this thing. You could pay. I mean, you don't have to give it out a $180 million contract. You can pay a veteran who can start enough for you and have a rookie ready to go in case that veteran fails.
That's my biggest question. Can they toe that line? Because either of the other two roads are very risky propositions for Brian Callahan and this coaching staff. If you go the rookie route and you go all in on the rookie, then you're banking on lightning in a bottle with a rookie quarterback to extend your stay here, right? To save your job with the Titans. If you go the veteran route and you go a Derek Carr, a Kirk Cousins, then you're an injury away or a big drop-off away from spiraling again and your job being on the line. So can they toe that line of having the veteran stopgap, the bridge, with the rookie waiting in the wings? Because I do think there is a sense from Titans fans of, please, let's not do the see what we got thing again without knowing if this guy can play football, can be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. A lot of fan bases are sick of that around the National Football League. So can they toe that line this year? And you'd probably need a top 2 pick to be able to do that.
David is next.
Hey, guys. First-time caller, long-time listener. This is the best show in Nashville, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for a great year of listening while I travel the roads. Want to ask y'all what we should do with our first-round pick. I say we go Will Campbell, offensive lineman out of LSU, and try to get Kirk Cousins in free agency. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the kind words. I would question whether you've been drinking or not, but you said you're driving, so I'll assume that's not the case, to assume that this is the best show anywhere, or at least in the city. I think, truly, this Texans game very much could change the narrative, right? If they win and things happen, like they could end up picking 7th with all these the 4-12 logjam is a mess.
Oh yeah, I mean,
right now
the Chicago Bears are 4-12 and currently have the number 9 pick in the draft.
That's what I'm saying.
The Raiders had the number 1 pick 2 weeks ago. They've won back-to-back games and now have the number 8 pick, and they desperately need a quarterback.
Yeah. So again, let's finalize the draft order before we really start to have those conversations. All I'm saying, all we can talk about now is you are at least closer to that conversation of being able to do the quarterback thing and hedging your bets with rookie and veteran. You could take Travis Hunter, you could take an edge rusher, you could take the 2 tackles that are likely to be first-round picks at this point in time. But let's just see where you end up before we start, actually digging in to some of these players. And I mean, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, I'd rather have Carr. I think I'd rather have Carr.
There's a discussion to be had there. I mean, Carr coming off an injury as well, a hand injury. Here's the thing. If they end up, because the caller was talking about taking an offensive lineman, if they end up with a top 2 pick, how often do you see teams with a number 1 or number 2 pick and a massive need at quarterback not take a quarterback with a number 1 or number 2 pick? Doesn't really happen.
No.
That often. They don't often trade out of those situations.
Not if you believe. You would have to be completely out on those quarterbacks to trade out in that. Just so, it exists.
I mean, we can go back and look. I'm curious. When has that happened? A team with a big need at quarterback drafting 1 or 2 and not taking a quarterback.
again, it very much depends on how that particular organization feels about those particular players at the top of the draft. I'm certain that it has happened. We can go back and look up some more historical reference on that for you, but it would be a stinging indictment of those quarterbacks at the top of the draft.
I'd be surprised to see any franchise that needs a quarterback hate those prospects so much that they pass on the quarterback position, especially if it's a coaching staff that is going to be under pressure going into 2025.
And if you're picking at the top of the draft, fair to expect that you would be feeling some level of pressure, even as a first-year coach, potentially heading into your second year at this point in time. Brandon will be the last call that we take before we break for Brian Callahan's press conference. What you got, Brandon?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How are y'all?
Good.
Hey, so if Jim Harbaugh would have taken over this as the head coach instead of Brian Callahan, what do you think the record would be? And then also I want to add, have y'all seen the ticket prices for the Texans game? It's ridiculous. It's like $5-6 per ticket now.
Yeah, it costs more to get a beverage at Nissan Stadium than it does to go to the game, which is a tough situation to be in. Thank you for the call, Brandon. The hypothetical about Harbaugh, I have no idea what the record would be. I mean, clearly, I thought this Titans team was capable of winning 7 games, and they did not do that. So we'll avoid the record conversation. I don't think they would ever hire him because he's a very strong personality, and they very much were more go along to get along at this phase. That, whether you could argue it was an overcorrection, you can argue it was a proper correction from what they previously had, but it's like presidential administrations. You usually vote for the opposite of what's been in place for a period of time, and Jim Harbaugh was not. Jim Harbaugh was closer to Vrabel than Callahan was, certainly, and that was their stated goal, collaboration.
Harbaugh ended up at a place with a franchise quarterback and a solid foundation.
Sure,
in terms
but the
of the
Bears
roster
turned him down. He also sounded like he was interested in the Bears, who had the number 1 overall draft pick in Caleb Williams, for a variety of different reasons there, including personality. We're going to take a break, and we'll touch on Vanderbilt's bowl win quickly before we go to Brian Callahan's press conference. A lot to cover. Great success for Vanderbilt this season, and I want to make sure that we give it its due. So that's next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So before we pivot to the Brian Callahan press conference, I do want to give a little love to Vandy. They win the Birmingham Bowl. Did you go?
I did not go. We gave it serious consideration.
Coward.
Because
You're going to the Music City Bowl. You wouldn't go to the Birmingham Bowl?
My future brother-in-law, Noah, Megan's brother, is getting a master's from Georgia Tech. So he is technically a yellow jacket at the moment. So we thought about going, but it was pouring rain, and we decided not to. I'm glad we didn't, because it hit a weather delay in the fourth quarter, and Georgia Tech made it spicy late, but Vanderbilt, ultimately the better team, in control, and finished with a winning season.
You can't stop Diego Pavia, baby, and he's coming back in 2025, as he announced on Twitter Saturday night. Quote, Nash Vegas, all caps. Nash Vegas, I'm officially back for another year. The thing we have to break him of is calling this place Nash Vegas, but that's fine. Nash Vegas, I'm officially back for another year. Next year will be the biggest year in Vanderbilt history. How about Pavia? I thoroughly enjoy him. 35-27, the victory in the Birmingham Bowl against Georgia Tech. He was responsible for 5 total touchdowns. He's been playing through a variety of different things all year long. He gives you hope for Vandy continuing to build on it. Somebody asked me yesterday, what did I expect Vanderbilt to do? If just another 500 season? I'm like, a 500 season is good. Like, I know that, at a certain point you'd like to raise the level of expectation, and I think Clark Lee has now done that successfully, to his credit. And Pavia is a big part of that. The momentum for Vanderbilt is real, man. And I don't know what that turns into. I don't know if it's another 7-win season or something of the like, but that is, to me, incredibly successful. Give people a reason here in Nashville to care about more than just the Vols. And obviously the Vols are always going to dominate things. It's a vastly bigger fan base, and they get way more attention, and rightfully so. Their budget is bigger, the brand is bigger, but still just meaningfully competitive football. Even if Lucas is scared that they'll play spoiler to his season next year at Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, regular season finale. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many fans are floating out there in Nashville that want a reason to root for the Vols or root for Vandy.
Man, I'll root for Vandy.
I guess so, but you're not real. You're not a real person or a real fan. So, if you're a football fan in Nashville, you have a team. You're not floating around.
I was going through it yesterday, though, man. Indiana barely beat Winthrop, and the big man that they paid all that money to just didn't show up for the game, apparently. I'm going through it.
But Vanderbilt does have a path. They have a path to another bowl game next year. You look at their early slate: Charleston Southern, at Virginia Tech, at South Carolina, Georgia State, maybe revenge on the Panthers at home, and Utah State at home. That's your first 5 games before the tough stretch of Bama, LSU, Mizzou, Texas, Auburn, and then finishing out with Kentucky and Tennessee. But there's a path there to 6-7 wins again with Diego Pavia. Can they nail it again in the transfer portal in terms of bringing guys in at value that are a fit for what they want to do, understanding Vandy's not going to compete for those big guns that are, choosing between Texas and Bama and the like. So
congratulations to Clark Lee and the entire program. Awesome season for them. Brian Callahan's press conference, less awesome, but it's next. Okay, Brian Callahan going to be at the podium here in just a second. Supposed to be at 11:45, but rarely is he on time for these particular obligations. So we will await the Titans head coach's press conference. We can take your phone calls in the meantime. 615-737-1045 is the number. Zach Lyons was just in here with brownies. Delightful. Thank you to Zach. You can hear Blaine and Zach coming up next. That's not the thing I need to be eating. After Jacksonville's press box is trying to give people diabetes. It's just a huge candy buffet. I've never seen Jimmy Wyatt eat so much candy in my life.
By the way, as we wait for Brian Callahan, Jackson did find an example. By the way, happy birthday to Jackson. Do we have Stephen A. ready to wish yourself a happy birthday?
It's a little hollow.
What's hollow?
Stephen A. That's essentially
this is exactly what Buck said to me this morning.
It's essentially what I said to him. He goes, "It's my birthday today." I said, "I don't care. I have a headache. Leave me alone."
Well, happy birthday, Jackson. Sorry you have to spend it with us. But he came up
through your job
in terms of an example of a team drafting one or two that had a need at quarterback that did not take a quarterback. The 2017 Cleveland Browns, who had Deshaun Kaiser as their quarterback, had the number 1 pick and took Myles Garrett. Great pick.
Yeah.
But Pat Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, some good quarterbacks in that first round that went way later. Mitch Trubisky was the number 2 pick.
And also there's talk in Cleveland of whether or not they're just wasting Myles Garrett with terrible teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. And they did draft Baker the following year with the number 1 pick. But Jackson did come up with that example. They are far and few between, though.
Is this why you're a LeBron fan? Because your birthdays are the same?
Me, LeBron, and Tiger, and Titans legend Kerry Collins.
Oh, wow.
That is a
that is a who's who.
How did you end up on that list, bud?
Rank those. Rank them by athletic ability.
Me, LeBron, Tiger, Kerry.
As one does. So, the quarterback situation, again, it would be interesting. There's going to be smoke screens. You're going to hear stuff. You've already heard stuff out there about whether or not this front office is very interested in the quarterbacks, whether they're interested in one significantly more than the other. Those things have already started to get out there. And, of course, the coaching staff can't look at any of them because they still have to try and win a football game, even though basically the entire portion of their fan base is actively rooting for them to lose to the Houston Texans in the Houston Oilers uniforms at Nissan Stadium on Sunday in front of a crowd of dozens. By the way, that game officially announced. Some people were hoping for a Saturday game just to get it out of the way. That was unlikely because they'll put the better games on Saturday. Texans and Titans, a noon Central Time kickoff at Nissan Stadium as the football gods intended. So we will look forward to that and put a bow on this 2024 season. Meantime, Mason Rudolph had a quote that I don't see. This is the problem with the Callahan press conference and his level of timeliness, because I want to get to some stuff, but I don't know how much time I have to get to it here. Do we want to try the Mason Rudolph stuff here? Or do we want to risk it all?
I mean, surely he'll be up any second now, but I mean, it's like an 11-second clip.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if it was the full, 2-minute conversation that we had with Mason Rudolph yesterday. But Mason Rudolph was asked a question about, or provided an answer on learning lessons from losses. This was Mason Rudolph, the Titans starting quarterback, yesterday.
Yeah, losing's never fun, but there's lessons to be learned, and generally they end up hardening you as a player and teaching you lessons. Experience is the best teacher.
So he talked about adversity, and he talked about, it can bring you together, it can bring you closer together as a team. But I'm just curious. I genuinely am curious. Do we feel that they have learned lessons from the amount? 13 losses is a monumental amount for any franchise in any year, no matter what the quality of the roster or otherwise. 13 is a ton. It's more losing than most of these players have ever done in their lives. Mason Rudolph, said that he's never been a part of something quite like this, but that he said that those adversity opportunities could bring you closer together. But I guess, how much does that actually matter? I believe him to be genuine when he says that, and I don't think that this is a locker room that's super fractured, or, certainly they're as tired of it, if not more tired of it, as you are, because they're putting themselves physically through it on a week-by-week basis, and they have no intention of losing as often as they have. But let's say, okay, they've learned lessons from the losses. Does it matter for 2025 when half the roster is going to be different? I mean, there's a good number of them that are going to be under contract, and maybe it's not quite half of a 53-man roster, but is there actual value in that, the way that, or is it just something that you say? Because I'm willing to accept it's just something that you say and you're trying to find some explanation or some answer to be provided after a 13 loss, and sometimes it comes out like hangover from success after the Texans game, or the Jarvis Brownlee quote that I know he regrets at this point in time about, the cold getting to guys and what kind of narrative that's spun up unnecessarily. It's a really difficult thing to kind of work through, but it's an even more difficult thing to try and build upon that when you know that a good many of these players are not going to be here next year.
I don't dismiss it. I do not dismiss. I get it's a cliche, learning how to win, building a winning culture. Like, those things are so easy to say, whatever. But then when I hear Jeffrey Simmons after a win in Houston and then the dramatic collapse in Washington the week after, talking about we have to, handle success better, and talking about a hangover after their third win of the season in week 12? I do put value in learning how to win, how to stack good and consistent performances, because clearly this team has not done that this year. At no point have they gone back-to-back weeks with consistency in all three phases. It feels like at every turn, every week, something has drastically dropped off.
So the tweets are starting to come out from Callahan's press conference, so we'll go now live to St. Thomas Sports Park.
Could potentially play. There's a chance that Dylan could potentially get back. So we'll see. We'll work through the week, but some of those guys may be back for Sunday after a week off, and then the guys that got hurt in this game, we'll see. Hard to clear the concussion protocol in a week usually, but again, we'll see how it turns out. Other than that, I'll let you guys go ahead.
Sticking with Mason again.
I'm actually going to probably play both of them, to be honest. Let those guys both have a chance to play. Don't know what and where that looks like. We're still really early in it, but I think both guys will have some opportunities. I'll let you know by the end of the week, starter, all that stuff. But I think both guys should play some football at the end of the year.
What's the reasoning behind that?
I just like to let them play, let them both have chances to play. I think Mason did some good things in the game. Tipped interception was unfortunate. But I do think that, let Will get another shot at throwing the ball around a little bit and playing some football. So, he's been really professional in his approach, how it's all gone. I think he's, earned a right to go play a little more football, just because of the way he's handled the whole process. I got a lot of respect for it. And he's been really professional and all those things. So, get a chance to go play a little bit more.
How much does watching those guys on Sunday, how much does that roll into your evaluation for the future?
For the quarterbacks? Yeah, it's all part of it. I wouldn't say, Sunday would be the one single determining factor. But yeah, it's all going to be a part of it. It's still another opportunity to get an evaluation and watch guys play. So
I guess a better way for me to
maybe I didn't answer that the way you wanted.
Good. You're good. How much does that decision involve your desire to look at them a little bit closer for the future? I guess
that's a part of it. Yeah. It's always a position that you have to have an answer for, and you want to make sure that whatever direction you head at that spot, that you have a full evaluation of it, and you feel really strongly that either one is or one isn't. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is to really make sure that we have all the looks that we need. And so it'll be all a part of that process.
When you dress that up for the locker room, because I know you had said Mason Rudolph, you felt he gives you a better chance to win. Now you're splitting it between the two.
Yeah.
How do you address the guys about that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we didn't win. We didn't win those games. So I think that's all part of it. And, I don't think there'll be any issue with that. I think they're get a chance to play some ball and see if we can't put together a good performance. And, maybe it's a situation where guys playing well, just let him play. And if he's not playing well, we'll let another guy take a chance at it. So it'd be different had we won 2 games in a row with Mason, and I'd probably stick with him for the last game. But we hadn't. We are where we are with our game performance and our record. And we'll let those guys, have a chance to both play.
Edie from CBS said something about her conversation with you pre-game, I guess, about a potential role for Mason next year. Teron, remind me what we heard was as
a possible bridge quarterback for next year.
I think all the options are on the table. I have not made any determination on that. That's not the decision that's been made by any stretch. So, I wouldn't. I don't really have much more to say about it. I didn't see it. But I have no decisions been made whatsoever on that process yet. That's all to come.
Tried something or encountered something like this with two quarterbacks in a game before? Just kind of how do you go about balancing that?
Let me think. Not maybe in the same vein. I know we did it in Denver, I think once or twice with, Peyton and Brock Osweiler at some point at the end of the year, but that wasn't quite the same situation. No, probably not. It's kind of unique in that regard, I think. So, again, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like. We'll still finish talking through it as a staff today, but we'll see.
There are young guys that have played some but not enough that you like to see in the finale, or have you already done that? I'm talking about a Joku or the inside backers or whoever it might be.
Yeah, I think those guys will still be in our normal roles and rotation. I thought John Joku stepped in and did a really pretty good job against a high pick, good rusher. That was good to see. There's some guys that are going to play some, but I wouldn't say it's any different than what we would do going into a game. Again, still trying to put together a winning performance and let the guys that give us a chance to do that play. So certainly guys can get opportunities like they have all year, but I wouldn't say it's going to change dramatically at this point.
How much do you think this whole thing has been a case of a competent or good roster underperforming, or you guys trying to get more out of a thin roster that's maybe not ready?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're always in the business of improving our roster. That's the first thing, and we still need to continue to do that. We got another personnel acquisition cycle that starts when the season ends on Sunday. It really starts from that moment on. So always trying to improve the football team as best we can. I thought when we were fully healthy and we started the season off, felt like we had a chance to be competitive. And so I think it's probably a mixture of both, Paul, to be honest, that there's some things I definitely had to do better, that I can do better as a head coach and put us in better position. And I think there's always room to continue improving the roster. And I thought we had some chances to win some games early that would have made maybe this season feel a little bit different than it does now. But I think that our biggest issue is some of the negative plays that have taken away from our ability to win the games, which, again, I've talked about the turnovers before. That's a huge part of it. But, I think a couple things go a little bit different. The feeling is different than it is right now. And we probably win a couple more games than the 3 that we've won. But, yeah, I think it's a process in totality. It's we got to coach and do things from our side better than we did, really all the way around, and we got to keep trying to find ways to add impact players wherever we can add them.
There's a report over the weekend, I think from the NFL Network, that said you and your staff were likely to be back next year. Wondering, is that an accurate reflection of maybe conversations that you've had with Amy Strunk at this point? Yeah,
I'll keep those to myself. But I think that every conversation I've had has been positive. We have conversations that are needed to be had, and that goes with Ran and Chad as well. Those, I don't really pay much mind to those reports. I just come in and try to do my job as best I can, and do it as long as they allow me to do it. And if for some reason at some point, hopefully it's years from now, that someone says we don't need your services anymore, then that's how it goes. But I don't pay too much attention to the good or the bad reports, to be totally honest. There's been plenty of negative ones too, I think. So I just try to keep doing my job and let all the other stuff handle itself, and just continue to communicate and have the conversations needed to try to improve our football team. So don't put too much stock in them, to be honest.
About penalties and turnovers being
Again, those aren't things that I concern myself with. I, again, try to do the best job I can and do it until they people in charge tell me that either they want me to do it or they don't. And that's the best way I can go about it. I just try to do the best I can every single day. And those are conversations that if they happen, and you keep going. So I don't really think too much about it. I focus on trying to get the football team ready to play and keep trying to coach to the best of my ability and keep trying to lead the team as best I can. So again, those aren't anything that I really focus on. And when the time comes to, move on to the next part, we move on to the next part.
You talked about the penalties and turnovers being the biggest things that have kept this team from being able to find ways to win. Mm-hmm. How much of that have been kind of
repeat mistakes by the same guys and how much of it has been kind of spread out throughout the roster?
Well, I think turnovers are, the guys that touch the ball the most, particularly the quarterbacks. Every interception has its own story. There's always, I wouldn't say they're repeat mistakes necessarily. I think they're just, we've had lots of things happen over the course of the season with the football, whether it be like this last week, unfortunate tip ball that gets tipped up in the air, bounces off a running back. We've had a few of those. Those are things that are hard to necessarily correct. They happen. We've had some decision-making issues with the ball where the ball gets intercepted. We've had some silly turnovers and things that we can control that we shouldn't do. We've had the ball taken from us. We've dropped punts. There's been a litany of turnovers that I wouldn't say any of is repeated mistakes per se. They're just things that happen over the course of the season, but they just happened a lot more than I would have expected. We lead the league in turnovers, and that's a tough spot to be. Repeat mistakes is kind of a weird way to say it, but I think there's lots of different ways the ball's been turned over for sure. Was there another part to that I miss?
No.
Just that.
28 targets for Chig in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Some of those have come late in games, but it happened again yesterday. Even a carry for him that turned into an explosive. What, I guess, has changed over the course of the year that has made him more of a focal point in your offense at this stage?
He's really started to play well. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. He's playing fast. Everything about what he's doing in the pass game and the run game as a tight end has been really encouraging. He's put really good performances together. He's caught the ball when it's thrown to him. He's made yards after contact and yards after catch. He's got explosive ability, as we've seen a couple different times with the ball in his hand. So, try to find ways to get the ball in his hands. And the reverse was one way we could do it. We throw him some screens. We try to do a lot of things to just get him in space and moving because he is hard to tackle. He's fast. He's physical. He does a really good job in the run game too. He's really developed into a really pretty good NFL tight end, both in the run and the pass game. So he's come on in the last handful of weeks. His production's picked up, but the biggest thing is he's playing with a lot of confidence within the system, and he's playing with and the quarterbacks have a lot of confidence in him. So really cool to see for Chig. A lot of work has gone into that, and I think Justin Houghton as well as the tight ends coach should receive some credit for the improvement that Chig has made this year. It's been good to see.
Mason missed him up the left side. Is that a ball that should have been an easy catch?
Yeah, it was a ball that had a chance to win us, or at least put us in position to tie the game. That was one that's was a near miss, and he'd love to have that one connect. Chig was open, the ball was thrown on time, and we just missed it by a fingertip. Those are plays that when I talk about not making the play to win the game, that's what I'm talking about is plays like that where you're right there. You have a chance and we don't connect for whatever reason. But that certainly had a great shot to score a touchdown or at least get us down really close to the goal line there in that moment.
Why wasn't Calvin a bigger part of the game for you in the first half? I think he had one catch in the first half.
The biggest part of the first half was the weather. Truthfully, we tried to run the ball pretty good that first part. It was still pretty wet. It rained really hard in the pregame, and then it was still precipitation in the first part of the game. And they do a good job. There's some things defensively that make it hard. They pay a lot of attention to Calvin. They pressed, they challenged him at the line of scrimmage. There was usually a safety helping nearby. They were intentional about finding ways to not let him get going. It's an aggressive press, corners, too high, man-ish coverage. They do a good job with that part of it. So a little bit of that early on. We were trying to take advantage of some of the underneath matchups with the tight ends and the running backs. But then he kind of found some rhythm in a spot and ended up being a really productive game for him.
Final play that you guys had on the fourth down play, I guess, when I tried to hit NWI. If he gets rid of the ball a split second earlier, does it have a better shot there?
He was actually right on time. I mean, he took one quick hitch and the ball was up. They tried to roll to we call it non-traditional Tampa 2, and so they're kind of rolling to different spots, and NWI is right there. He got it up on time, and the ball was really sort of right in the spot you expected to be. It just was. As that safety tried to roll out, he got a little bit tighter than normal you see versus Tampa, and he was able to come make the play. The timing of the play was fine, and the throw was really about where you're expected to be. I think the safety just made a nice play.
You mentioned a couple of times now the idea of there being those couple of close losses early in the year that kind of changed things. I'm curious, is there a moment that stands out as a turning point for you when it went from thinking things were competitive to maybe not realizing that idea?
I think that the loss at the point in the season we were in, the loss to Indy early was one where, it was like, God, those are games we've been in position to potentially win, and we haven't been able to get one. That was a disappointing one. We played a really tough gauntlet there in the middle against some really good playoff teams. And we did some good things. We played well at certain points. But yeah, it was that, you start the season, you find a way to win a game in Chicago, and you find a way to win against the Jets when you got opportunities, and you end up 2-2 at the break, as opposed to 1-3. That just changes a little bit of the momentum of the season. And you end up not feeling like you're in such a hole where you're still sort of competing, you're still kind of in the thick of it, and there's a momentum and a confidence factor that comes with those things. And I think it was just harder to climb out of the hole that we put ourselves in, and then we faced a bunch of really good teams in the middle of it. That was challenging. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of how I felt about it.
Seems like JC has had kind of some more difficult moments toward the latter half of the season than he did in the first half. Mm-hmm. Is that a case of people getting a bit of a read on him, or what do you think the reason is?
I think there's any time that you play a lot of football, people study you, study what you do well, study how you pass set, study how you use your hands, and guys get better at preparing for it. There's more tape. They see where more your weaknesses are more clearly than maybe if there's only a limited sample size. Part of that's playing a lot of football for a rookie, and it's been a long. The rookie wall thing is real in some senses. Mentally, it's hard to the length of the season gets on these guys. It feels really long, and you're out there every week against really good players. But I think he's learning and gotten better. He's had some up and down moments. The consistency part of it is one of the things that we'd like to see, level out some, as opposed to there's a little bit of up and down here the last part of the season. So those are things he's got to improve on. But I think ultimately, for a rookie tackle that made the switch from the right side to the left side, he's put some really good stuff on tape. And he's a powerful run blocker. When he gets his hands on you, he's hard to beat. So there's a lot of really good things that I'm really excited about JC, even though there's been some up and down in the play over the back half of the season. So he's going to continue to get better.
Go ahead. Is he unquestionably your left tackle going forward, or is there a scenario potentially where the draft brings you a tackle, obviously we need one on the other side, who presents himself as a better left tackle that would kick JC back to the other side? Yeah,
hard for me to make any statements about something like that. I just I don't know enough about the draft to make any definitive commentary on it. I just know that we're always open to adding as many good players as possible. So take that for whatever it's worth. I don't really know what's available or what's out there, but we're always looking to add as many good players as we possibly can. And I would never essentially close the door if it meant that we could add a particular player. So I would say it's probably pretty safe to say he's the left tackle, unless we change our mind. That's probably the best way to put it.
Were you hopeful of getting Jalen back at some point yesterday, and has he had just really bad luck and missed a big opportunity by getting hurt early in both of the starts he's made?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to put it. Has been bad luck for him injury-wise. Chances to play and perform, and injuries have cut both those opportunities short. So I wanted to get a really good look and playing against a really good rusher. But he just didn't work out that way. So it's definitely nothing he can do about those things. It's not you can't hold it against him necessarily because of the injury thing. But certainly opportunity in two different games to see him play extended time against good players. We haven't been able to get that look at him.
What do you feel like will be your options at right tackle this week?
Same ones as we've had. One thing I will say is I thought John Njoku came in there and really fought and really played well. That was good to see him do that. So we'll see. I think that you might get to see some John. Obviously, we got Nick there as well, and then if JD is healthy and available, we'll see where he's at by the end of the week. But pretty much the same, same as it's been most of the year.
Understanding that each penalty or turnover have their own story, but in the aggregate, when you look at a team that is at the bottom of the league in both of those categories, what does that tell you?
Tells you that make a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of things we can control penalty-wise. There's things that, the easy ones like jumping off sides on both sides of the ball. Those are things that we can control. You can't always control a holding penalty. Those are sometimes technique related. Sometimes they're just how the officials see it during the game. But those are all things that we can continue to coach and try to get better at. So those are things that I can do a better job of making sure we're emphasizing those things, which we do. And then we got to do a better job of playing cleaner football when it comes to the things that you can control in a penalty, namely the snap counts and hand placement and things like that. Those are all things that we can get better at. Turnovers, you got to protect the ball. I mean, we emphasize those things. We got to keep emphasizing them. Obviously, we got to find a way to do it better because it's been worse in the league. So ultimately, those things all fall on me to make sure that I'm doing the things that we have to do to correct them and coach them. And then there's a player responsibility part of it they got to do when it comes to performing in the game with it. So those things all tie together. But it's not good enough at any stretch, and it's going to lose you a lot of games if you turn the ball over and have the penalties if you're at the bottom of the league in both those categories.
Had a different corner rotation to start. Was the reason Cheeto was the odd man out at the beginning?
It was defensively. They as we went through the last game, felt like Cheeto needed to respond and play better than he did in the game before. So Baker and Jarvis started in the game with Roger being inside, and then Cheeto ended up coming back in the game, responded really well, understood where it was coming from, and then when he got his opportunity, really did a nice job when he came back in the game. So that was good to see. But that's all that really was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. That's Titans head coach Brian Callahan addressing the report about his job security, talking about the quarterback rotation, ? And an interesting note in there about J.C. Latham with the offseason more rapidly approaching and some critical decisions to be made, not just at quarterback, but up and down the roster. We'll react to all of that and also get into Gentry Estes' column in the Tennessean this morning, calling for the firing of both Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? If these questions are keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to the team that's there to keep you on the right track and to guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future. They are more than just a fiduciary firm. They are a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and, most importantly, at the end of the day, your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Funny that we're coming back with some Ryan Hurd. Hurd texted me yesterday, that's a fine, and said that he was convinced that the Titans are going to win this last game against the Texans on Sunday because they have absolutely no business doing so, because it would be hugely detrimental to the future of the franchise and a great many reasons. So he's convinced that the Titans are going to win versus the Houston Texans at home in Week 18 to put a bow on this thing. You heard from Brian Callahan there on a variety of different things. So quarterback rotation. I mean, here's what I'll say. Here's the reason why I like it, even though, to me, that's not necessarily indicative of trying to win a game, even though they're saying that they're trying to win a game, even though their fan base does not want them to win a game. The last time we saw a quarterback rotation was with Malik, and that was the weird Downing stuff that he was trying to do with putting Malik in there to take handoffs. And
not really a rotation. That more of a package.
Deployment.
Yeah. Deployment would be the word.
But there was not quite a rotation, and maybe it was just Vrabel being difficult at the end, because there was some kind of series-like rotation at some point. It wasn't a full game, but they did try it, remember, because the crowd booed, and Derrick Henry took great offense because he thought Malik Willis was the player being booed and not the decision by the coaching staff being booed there.
Was this the Falcons game? Didn't Malik have one series he fumbled and then they never did it again?
Was it the Falcons game? Yes. No, that would have been Will's start. Will started that whole way through.
I want to say it was Colts that Malik came in and immediately had a fumble at home, and he got booed.
There was a couple.
I'm telling you, Malik played and fumbled. Vrabel talked about a rotation. Levis started. Malik came in on like the second or third series, fumbled, and then Levis the rest of the way.
I have completely wiped that from my memory if that is in fact something that happened.
Ironically, when I think QB rotation, I think Texans pre-CJ Stroud. Obviously, who the Titans will play on Sunday, when they were doing the Jeff Driscoll, Davis Mills thing.
C.J. Stroud would play.
You're right. No, I'm saying when I think QB rotation, I think Texans pre-CJ Stroud. You're right. I doubt he will play Sunday. We'll see. But they were doing the Jeff Driscoll, Davis Mills thing, 2-quarterback system.
And they lost. The Titans lost. That was a tough one.
Yeah, overtime, right?
That was a tough one.
Or was that Case Keenum? They all blend together.
It was all bad. It was all some variety of backup, replacement level starting quarterback play rotation out there to beat the Titans, and it was not good. Now, I like it for this reason alone. If you're going to get back, in all likelihood, dip back into the quarterback stuff, right? This offseason, we fully expect them, however they address it. They could address it a multitude of ways, right? They have Will Levis under contract, but they had Malik Willis under contract. They can trade Will. That's the thing that I've been, largely advocating. I feel like I've been talking about that since October.
The only way I feel confident they will not address the quarterback position is running back with Will Levis next year. That's the one thing I'm confident in.
So
I know you don't feel that way, but I think that's insane.
Don't feel what way?
I know your position is that more likely than not, Will Levis is on this team next year.
Well, just because he's under contract. Because he
is under contract. But
so by percentage chance, it's a higher percentage chance that he would be here because he's here now, right? But I get what you're saying. You're going to give him another opportunity. I think I don't know definitively. They have not said publicly that they have made up their mind on Will Levis. But this at least presents Will with another opportunity to show them something. Whatever the situation, however the quarterback position is addressed next year, give them real competition for Will Levis. Be it Shador or Cam Ward, be it Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins. Create a situation where no one player is handed that job, right? Because we went through this whole offseason with one player being handed that job and the guise of a backup quarterback competition, even though we knew that they paid Mason Rudolph to come in here and be the backup quarterback.
Again, I think the premise of create competition for Will Levis next year is incredibly flawed.
No, it's not for Will Levis. It's for them across the board. Yes. I don't want Derek Carr to be handed the job. I don't want Shador Sanders to be handed the job.
Okay, so you're not saying create competition for Levis in 2025.
I want the Titans to have a quarterback competition.
Okay, yes.
And whomever emerges from that.
I thought it sounded like you were saying bring somebody in to compete with Will Levis.
Well, he's going to be here in training camp, yeah?
Why is that a guarantee?
It's not a guarantee, but more likely than not, he's going to be in here in training camp.
If I had to bet on it now, I would say he will not be here during
training camp.
Training camp. No,
okay.
I think the Will Levis experience here is over.
Brother,
I think
I'm not disagreeing with you, but again, you don't let go of those players. Like, it's not like he's going to be released or traded for before training camp begins. That is not on the timeline of how these things typically go down based on what you believe to be the way that they would approach it. I completely acknowledge that there would be tons of reasons to move him off this roster next year. I think it makes absolutely no sense to do it with 2 years left on his deal before training camp.
I could not disagree more. I mean,
we will have an entire summer to debate this. It's not worth spinning our wheels on
these examples we've brought up, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Drew Lock, all these guys that, let's see what we got, right? Doesn't work.
Traded to be backup quarterbacks elsewhere in the NFL.
Yes, they were traded, and they were traded in March, right? They're traded when the window opens up. Okay. They didn't come back for training. I just don't see that playing out that way.
6 months to talk about it. I don't care about that right now. All I want is the Titans to have a legitimate, authentic quarterback competition for no one player to be anointed as QB1 so that we can actually see who is best served to play the quarterback position as opposed to what this year was, which is Amy had him in the statement. Let's make him the starting quarterback and spend all kinds of money around him and pray to God it works because they didn't have a backup, really.
Even if it's rookie veteran, I agree with not going into training camp with the understanding of who your guy is, even if we know who it probably is going to end up being. That said, not that many quarterback competitions every year around the NFL training camp. They're very far and few between.
For sure.
I think that was an issue of anointing a guy who simply had not earned it yet.
Agreed.
Right? Like Kirk Cousins, you bring him in to be a veteran stopgap. It is what it is, right? If he's your starter, he's your starter.
How wrong are you about Atlanta, by the way?
Oh, that's the thing I've been most wrong about, and that's a long list. I mean, Atlanta, I thought they were insane for taking Michael Penix.
You were, I've seen you, genuinely perplexed by things that sports teams have done before, but I don't know that I've seen you actively as angry at a franchise that you have no investment in whatsoever for them drafting Michael Penix.
Great move. Excellent foresight.
So anyway, we will see what happens at the quarterback position. They are going to have a rotation on Sunday, it sounds like. That is going to be some level of evaluation for both of them. Brian Callahan was also asked, and this was brought up to me yesterday. I didn't hear the TV broadcast, obviously, during the game. But there was some mention of a discussion between Aditi. I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to attempt it. Apologies to the CBS reporter who was on the sidelines yesterday. But her talking about her conversation with Brian Callahan, she had mentioned that Mason Rudolph was at least in consideration to be a stopgap type of situation for 2025. Brian Callahan was asked about that today. He said there's no determination's been made on that at all, other than it's an option. So you can move on from that. The other part of that is, before we get into the job security stuff, is J.C. Latham. This has been something that's been talked about a couple of different times because J.C.'s had, he's had what you normally associate with a rookie offensive lineman season to have. It had a better start than it has had a finish. We'll see how he finishes against the Houston Texans.
He has hit the proverbial rookie wall.
One would imagine if such a thing existed, that is what J.C. Latham has been met with. And also Josh Hines-Allen is a really hard player, no matter how bad the Jags defense is. And
that's also what Brian Callahan said today. He said the rookie wall is real.
Yeah.
And J.C. Latham's kind of experiencing that right now.
Well, you've never played more football in your life than you have in your first NFL season, right? These seasons are significantly longer, even in a season that's not going to result in the postseason. This is more football than they've ever been asked to play in one stretch of time, especially when their bye was week 5. And they haven't had a Thursday night game to break it up. They haven't had a Monday night game to break it up. This has been from week 6 on, baby. It's just straight through, for better or worse.
Latham played in 14 games for Alabama last year, all the way up to the semifinal against Michigan.
And the offensive line position, when you're getting in a car wreck basically on every play, that's tough on the wear and tear no matter how big and bad you are. And he's a big and bad mother. But for JC, the question was asked, if a situation presented itself via draft, via free agency, whatever personnel acquisition route they take to further address this offensive line, because we know they need another tackle, would you rule out moving JC to right if you had a better option at left and letting that bear itself out? And he didn't shut it down. He also said that he has no idea who's out there in the draft class or all these different kind of things, because, again, the focus should be solely on trying to finish out this season, and then you start your draft evaluation as a coaching staff. Obviously, it's different for the front office. But I thought that was worth noting, and that, that gives them a little bit of a versatility there, because you have to be able to plug and play with your best offensive lineman to put your best 5 out on the field. There's no question that J.C. Latham is going to be one of the best 5 offensive linemen on the roster next year. The question is he the best left tackle? This year, indisputably, he was the best left tackle option, and I think he's acquitted himself fairly well for what expectation should be for a rookie offensive lineman.
I mean, what scenario would there be where someone other than J.C. Latham is playing left tackle next year?
So Will Campbell is somebody who's talked about at the top of the draft. Again, it depends on where they land, right?
Then you'd be talking about spending a first-round pick on a tackle.
They did it last year.
They did, but
they did it in 2020.
And so much of this depends on where they
spent a second-round pick on a tackle in 2021, baby. They've been chasing tackles since they let Conklin walk.
But so much of this depends on the draft position.
Correct.
I suppose they could take a tackle.
It is entirely possible. I would not say likely, because right now they have the second overall pick. Could it change after next week? Hell yes. But that could end up 9th.
That feels like the only real scenario where J.C. Latham is not the left tackle next year. If they go another year with a first-round pick.
There's not a franchise left tackle out there on the open market that you're going to move J.C. Latham for. They tried that with Andre Dillard, and you saw how the results. I mean, I've never seen a player get benched that many times in one season. Maybe NPF, he was inactive yesterday, but still. And then the final part of that was him being asked about his job security, because that Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero joint, column doing basically a blurb on some of the less certain situations in the NFL and various people's job securities. Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport reported, according to sources, that Brian Callahan and the bulk, not all of his staff, but the bulk of his staff is expected back in 2024 or 2025. I do think it's worth noting that the fact that report is even worth making for a first-year head coach is notable, because Gerard Mayo is going through similar struggles, if not with similar results or similar metrics, where they are trying to see if there has been improvement with the way that the football team operates. So the fact that it was out there at all, whether it's that he's safe or that he's in danger, is worth noting, because that means that the conversation was at least had about not bringing back a first-year head coach. And, for the sake of continuity and trying to continue to build upon what they've got, if you're not going to clear house entirely the way that they didn't do last year, then I don't think it makes total sense, though we'll talk about it with some level of finality after next week's game, what we think they should do versus what they might actually do, and that's still up in the air, versus what they might actually do. The Brian Callahan thing done before the Jags game and the Texans game is worth paying attention to, because we have seen some level of determination being made on people's job securities before in the season, and then all of a sudden that's turned on its head. Now, Brian Callahan is not in a similar situation that his predecessor was, where there's the column out there about ready, steady, Vrabel, and then all of a sudden week 18, that's not what's going on here. We're going to move on. And even then, they waited longer than the average team does to make that decision to fire the coach, because that came down on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I waited one day longer.
I mean, that matters.
Yeah, no, it wasn't on Black Monday. And typically, if you get through that Monday and a change hasn't been made, usually a change isn't going to be made.
Correct. And so, that there's any level of variance, I'm just trying to figure out what their pattern of behavior is. Really what Amy Adams Strunk pattern of behavior is, to see if there's anything that we can determine based on precedent, based on previous decision-making, that can inform us further beyond her talking, because she's not going to do that, about what they might be thinking here. He's more likely back than not. That is the thing that makes the most sense. All I'm saying is, with 2 weeks left to go in the season, or with 2 games left to go at that point, it does bear noting how that might change, if any change happens at all, or how that thinking might change as we work our way through. The other part of this is, and we'll probably talk about it more tomorrow because we're basically at the end of this segment here, it started to become more knives out from, I wouldn't say a fan perspective. I'd say, I wonder what, we don't do approval ratings on front office members and coaches the way that we do on elected officials, for example. But maybe it's a poll worth putting out there tomorrow, what the Titans fan approval rating of Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan, separate of one another, is at this point in time, because Gentry Estes is the first one. Gentry Estes, the columnist of the Tennessean, is the first one to actively call for somebody's job. He is saying that the Titans should fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker as a combination because there's not a good because there's not a good reason not to. Because of the results, the way that this thing hasn't turned around. In fact, it has been worse by record, and this season has been worse by a mile with the things that they tried to put in place that haven't come to fruition. Whether you agree or disagree with that or not, that's obviously you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest with you. But we'll dive into that more tomorrow, and we'll take your last call for phone call, 615-737-1045. Touch on Monday Night Football here a little bit, coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is how you get your last call for phone calls in. Got one game on the board tonight. It's the Lions and the Niners out west. Dan Campbell is steadfast that he is going to play his starters in this game, which runs counter to some of the way that you might be thinking about how a team who is vying for the top of their division. By the way, that Vikings-Lions game at the end of the year, electric.
Yeah, so this game tonight technically has no impact, right?
No bearing on them.
It's like that Titans-Cowboys game a couple of years ago on Thursday Night Football.
Or that Titans-Saints game even more years ago.
They've had a couple of those. It's not a regular season finale, yet it has no impact on playoff status.
It always seemed to be in like week 17. Wasn't that Cowboys and Saints game of week 17?
Second to last week of the regular season, if I'm not mistaken.
Because then Dobbs went to Jacksonville, and we know what took place there.
Yeah. So the Lions could, if they win tonight, go undefeated on the road this season. First team since the 2020 Chiefs, I believe, to do that.
What a novel concept.
8-0 away from home. But, yeah, either way, the winner between Lions and Vikings on Sunday Night Football next week gets the 1 seed and the division.
So we'll be fascinated to see what the Lions do and how they approach that. The Vikings, did you see the level of celebration for Sam Darnold walking into the locker room? He's not leaving Minnesota.
Yeah, you look at that and you say, man, and I get he's technically a pending free agent.
No.
But... yeah, I mean, how much of an overthink would that be? How risky a proposition would that be? You get a guy in there that clearly is ingrained, that is playing high-level football at the quarterback position, and you're going to roll the dice on that just to have the guy on the rookie deal, right? Is that important to have a quarterback on a rookie deal that you're going to roll out unproven J.J. McCarthy coming off a season-ending injury?
Now, if you're a coach, it's not an overthink. You keep the guy. But the coach isn't responsible for the financial decisions entirely. The coach can have input, certainly, on how that goes, because the most logical thing would be Minnesota tagging him. The expectation is that Minnesota is going to tag him based on the reports that you see. Of course, all this stuff is, I don't want to call it a bit premature, because we're nearing the end of the regular season, and you'll start to see those transactions coming down the line. But it would make the most sense to keep McCarthy there as a backup, continue to let him work his way back from injury on a season-ending injury, a season-ending surgery that took place in, training camp ahead of week 1, essentially, and to tag Darnold. Now, the price tag on the tag is ballpark 40?
Probably.
About $40 million, and that's fine because Minnesota can make the money work with where they are right now, even with having Justin Jefferson under the contract that they currently have him on. So, Titans fans, I think there's This is the thing that I always caution with both draft order before the season ends and the free agent market before we really get to the point where these things, there has been some level of determination on. The best left tackle who would hit free agency, say you're vying for a left tackle and you want to move JC to right. Well, Garrett Bowles has already been they already put him under contract. They signed him to an extension.
Yeah, he's been extended.
Yeah, he's been extended. That's done and dusted. Budda Baker, one of the best safeties, one of the best defensive backs in football. He pending free agent. No, let's give him a contract. So there's a couple of different things there that you have to kind of just keep in mind, that the free agent market as is currently constructed right now, when you look at Spot Tracker over the cap, it is very much subject to change based on the way that teams will continue to orchestrate their finances.
By the way, real quick, elsewhere, Patriots might play Joe Milton against the Bills on Sunday, which could have an impact on Titans draft position.
Now, no offense to Joe Milton, but if there was ever a secure the tank move, there would be. Well, is Drake May dealing with an injury?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he's dealing with something.
Did he come out of that game?
Because Draw Mayo said it's a possibility that Milton is active in Week 18. So it's just something to kind of monitor. I do think May might be dealing with something.
Well, there's a difference between having him active and playing him. If they started Joe Milton, that'd be kind of crazy.
He hadn't been active pretty much all year.
Yeah.
So the Bills obviously will be expected to rest their starters as they locked in the 2 seed in the AFC yesterday.
It is going to be such a fun postseason. Like some of these teams that are in this, like the haves, we've talked about this. The haves are so much further away from the have-nots this year in the NFL than they have been at any point, certainly in the last decade. And I'm looking forward to seeing how all this stuff plays out. Houston coming in here at 9-7. It seems to be a bit of a foregone conclusion that they wouldn't play C.J. Stroud. But they also do have, what's the name of the wide receiver they picked up off waivers? Deontay Johnson? Deontay Johnson coming back into the mix or getting claimed off waivers and trying to work their way into that offense after the injuries that Tank Dell sustained. I'd be curious to see what their strategy is. I'm sure we'll read the reporting on it coming out of Houston this week, whether they plan to play their starters or not. But obviously, Titans fans are rooting for a loss because you want to secure the best possible draft position across the board that you can. Ready for some polls, birthday boy? What do you got back there? Late or too early?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Which Titans team was worse, 2014, 2015, or 2024? Now, 62.6% of the audience are voting 2024. 29.4% say 2014. Only 8% say 2015. I'm calling recency bias on this one.
Yeah, that's recency bias.
Cannot believe the gap is that big. 2014 was abysmal. They had less wins, less talent. The vibe around the coaching staff was worse. And I know 2024 is bad. 2014 was worse. So that's recency bias to me.
Well, and, I also do think that speaks to, what we were talking about earlier, Lucas, where if you'd have just told the fan base that there was some level of rebuild going on here, that they might have been more accepting of it relative to the expectation. So I do think that it's fine to differentiate between worst and most disappointing.
Yeah, maybe most disappointing. Maybe that's a poll for tomorrow. How do you feel after getting swept by the Jags? Angry about the loss or happy about the draft pick? 82% are happy about draft position.
That is the correct response from the fan base. I do also think, though, that there is some kind of, just to get swept by that Jags team, that's pretty low, man.
How much stock do you put into the report that Brian Callahan is expected back in 2025? 72% of the audience say he'll be back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most logical conclusion, but I've seen those things before the season actually ends, and I saw that just last year with this particular coaching staff, or not this particular coaching staff, but with a Titans coaching staff where a decision was made and then a decision was changed, and that took a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months for her to figure out.
Well, that report from NFL Network, it cited improvement, that inside the building they've seen improvement within the Titans this season. So we asked, what improvement, if any, have you seen with the Titans this year? Just sorting through answers that don't say draft position. CT says play calling seems to have a better flow to it when Rudolph is quarterback. I can see some interesting wrinkles in Callahan's approach when he has confidence in the quarterback. Didn't see that in the first half of the year.
Yeah, we can get into more of this tomorrow, and this is a good thing for Cosell, I think, to talk about the schematic. Like, are they schematically sound? Because Greg has made some comments this year about Will Levis and how they haven't helped him schematically, but is the scheme on the whole good for the right kind of quarterback? That could be debated.
Michael points out some respectable performances from individual players. Tajay Spears has improved. Nick Westbrook-Akine has improved.
NWI has.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nice sideline catch yesterday, too. Yeah. Where do you stand on Cam Ward opting out of the second half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl? 60% don't mind it, 40% hate it.
Where do you stand on the Pop-Tarts Bowl?
On Cam Ward opting out of the second half.
Yeah, no, I think it's a non-issue to me. Like, he gave you what you wanted. He gave you a fun half of football. He gave you some fun in a fun bowl game that, has no real consequence. And then he got the hell out of there because he's trying to be an NFL pro and not get hurt.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Primetime tonight. That'll be fun. 7 p.m. We'll catch you there on the A to Z Sports Streaming Network. You got Blaine and Zach coming up next. I'm sure there will be plenty of discussion about what Brian Callahan had to say. See you.